Aye.
Thank you all for staying and listening to me. This is my first time doing something like this, so I apologize if I make any mistakes. My name is Ansley, and I'm here. I would like to thank Mighty Well for sponsoring my speech today. Emily Levy, I apologize if I'm pronouncing her last name wrong, but she's the founder of Mighty Well, also a really good friend of mine, and she's currently in Kuwait getting married, so yay her. Just some things I would appreciate you walking away from this today with. I guess one of the biggest things is that I want you all to know that patients are people too, and we're able to accomplish some pretty cool things outside of the hospital, and even in the hospital, but more outside of the hospital. Obviously, nobody likes being in the hospital, but yeah, I would like you to kind of understand some ways to support your patients or people you work with and that are facing some health challenges. I also would like to hear from you guys what you think some of your patients need the most. And then I also just kind of want you to see what life is like as a young adult that's a vascular access patient, and I am TPN dependent. So again, I am Ansley, and some people that like to do the things that I do, aka advocating and speaking and living life with a chronic illness, we like to refer to ourselves as professional patients, because that's kind of what we are in a way. I have been sick since birth, but most of my health issues started when my parents started introducing foods to my diet when I was a baby. And I have always faced difficulties getting nutrition and eating and tolerating food, but I kind of took this as an opportunity to do something that I really loved, and I really loved hearing other people express their stories and teaching others things that we have kind of learned and that we would like others to learn from just being patients and spending a lot of time in hospitals and doctor's offices and all of that. So I am 18, like I said, and I really started being interested in doing things like this when I was about 15. That's when I was started on TPN and got my very first central line, which was a lovely pesky PICC line. Which I say pesky because it was kind of annoying having something hang from my arm for 7 months, but I knew it was what I needed to keep myself healthy and able to do the things that I loved the most. So aside from my medical journey, I have a lovely family who supports me. I'm a daughter, a sister, a friend. I'm currently a high school student as well. I'm a senior, yay. And I obviously am an advocate, and I'm also a Girl Scout, which I had to throw in there because that's a really big part of my life. That's my go-to extracurricular activity. I was never somebody interested in sports. So this is kind of the start. As you can see, there are some pictures of me with feeding tubes, actually. But I was diagnosed with my first digestive disease when I was 18 months old. I was diagnosed with eosinophilic esophagitis, and that was kind of the answer to why I had been sick for so long and why I never really tolerated food, because my body was having an inflammatory response to it. So after quite a few years of trying to get in nutrition and increase calories so that I could gain weight and be a lovely little girl, I started tube feeds, and my family used to travel to Cincinnati Children's Hospital for most of my care. I went there from, I believe, age like 4 to 11, and I got my first G-tube when I was 4, and I still depend on lots of nutrition support today, but I fortunately can eat a little bit by mouth and have some drinks and food when I want to. I tell a lot of people that I like to eat socially, so a lot of people don't realize that a lot of social events are planned around meals and food and all of that, and so when I'm out with my friends or I'm at like a birthday party or doing something like that, I will eat because I want to, and I want to be as normal as I can be in those situations. But at home or just obviously when I'm struggling, I stay away from things like that because I know that they aren't necessarily my friend in my worst moments. So this is a very brief history of my medical journey. Due to my eosinophilic esophagitis, I have had endoscopies, usually at least 2 to 3 a year now, but I used to do endoscopies and colonoscopies every time we would travel to Cincinnati, which was every 3 to 4 months. So that's why there's so many of them, and I don't even know if that number is still accurate, but I think it is. I also have had 5 stomas for feeding tubes. I got my first G-tube placed when I was 4, like I mentioned, and then when I was 15 and I started having some motility issues, we tried to place a GJ tube, and that's when we realized that I have a very special anatomy that doesn't like GJ tubes. So we tried 2 of those. We moved my stoma, which at that point it had been 12 years old, and I was not ready to start that whole process over again, but I had to. And then later that failed, and so we had to move my stoma back to where it was, and that was my G-tube, and in September of 2015, I had my J-tube placed, so I have 2 separate feeding tubes. Also, 5 CVC placements, or in that I mean Broviac Hickman lines. My body likes to somehow put holes in them, and so that's why I have had so many of them. 3 PICC lines and 1 power port, which I currently have. And in 2017, I spent approximately 187 days inpatient, which was rough, but I got through it. And then I've traveled to 4 other states for my medical care. Currently, I am treated here at Mayo in Arizona, and I just transitioned here in May of last year when I turned 18. So a big question that a lot of people with chronic health issues ask themselves is, why me? What did I do to deserve this? Why was I the one chosen to be sick? A lot of that, especially when a lot of us have done nothing but try to keep ourselves the absolute healthiest, and we sometimes end up being some of the sickest people there are. So I still ask myself, why me? I think a lot of people with chronic illness do, but something I've kind of discovered was I really need to use my struggles to power my future and help other people, specifically people that are new to this. I'm almost 19 and I have been doing this for my entire life, and so I take a lot of time to try and help other people that are entering this world for the first time, because it's scary, and I know that I wish that there was somebody like me that would have helped me when I was new to all of this and diagnosed with my first chronic illness. Well, at that time, I think my parents would have appreciated it more, but all of us would. So, like I said earlier, patients are people too. I love crafting and doing things like that with my mom mainly. You can see in the first picture, I went to the Pinners Conference, which if you don't know, it's a giant Pinterest conference. So that was great. I rocked it with my boot and the pink wheelchair. And then the middle picture there is my first high school prom. You can't really see very well, but I purposely chose a dress that showed off my G-tube because I'm proud of my medical devices. So, and that's my best friend Samantha, who doesn't have any chronic health issues, but she's been a huge support to me. And a little backstory about that picture, I was admitted to the hospital a week before for a bleeding gastric ulcer, and I was in the ICU getting blood transfusions because my stomach was bleeding so much. And I thought at the time, I was like, I'll be out in time for prom, no big deal. And at that time, I didn't even really know what dress I was going to wear, what shoes I was going to wear. I was just winging it. And come the Friday before prom, I told my medical team, hey, by the way, prom's tomorrow. Any way you could let me get out? And they did everything in their absolute power to get me out. So I was discharged from the hospital at 1 p.m. on the Saturday of prom. I went straight to the hair salon and had her detangle my rat's nest from laying in a hospital bed. And then from there, I went to the nail salon. And then from there, I raced home, tried on 3 dresses I had bought, picked that one, and discovered I didn't have any shoes to wear. So we drove to Payless. I bought some shoes. And then we went straight to the park to meet my friends for pictures, and I went off to prom. So thankfully last year's prom was not that crazy, and hopefully this year's won't be either. And then that last picture on the end is me and some of the girls I'm in Girl Scouts with. As you get older, not a lot of girls are interested in Girl Scouts anymore, so that's why there's so few of us. But we went to see a play, and it was, I guess it was like a Christmas ballet, but it was fun, and I enjoy my time with my fellow Girl Scouts. So I have not had any line infections in the 4 years I have had a central line and been on TPN, which is pretty much unheard of nowadays. So I am thankful for that. So what's wrong with me? I know I told you I have a diagnosis of eosinophilic esophagitis, but that doesn't really have a lot to do with why I'm on TPN today. So I have EE, like I said, gastroparesis, mast cell activation disorder, small fiber neuropathy, dysautonomia, Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, and median arcuate ligament syndrome. The mast cell disease, the dysautonomia, and the Ehlers-Danlos syndrome all go hand in hand. A lot of people call it like the trifecta, because generally a lot of patients that have one end up having all three. So the gastroparesis is the main reason I am on TPN. The dysautonomia doesn't help that because my autonomic system doesn't like to help my digestion. So yeah, that's a little background of my medical diagnoses. So a big thing I recommend is online support groups. So these are a few of my favorite groups. I really like the last one on the end that is called Teens with Feeding Tubes. As you can see, there is, in this picture, 368 members. And so there's almost 400 of us young adults that all kind of go to bat and support each other. And a lot of groups, you don't really know the other people in the groups very well. Like, yeah, you might have a couple of mutual friends, but in that group, we are a large family. We all love and support each other very much, and the majority of us are on extremely similar paths with our health. So what does my line do for me? In this picture, you can see I have two lines. I have my Hickman line and my port. There was a little bit of time where my team wanted to make sure my port was working well before they pulled out the Hickman line. So that's why I had two. I wasn't super happy to have two, but it was a month that I just stuck it out and took like sponge baths, and it was great. Not really, but okay. But I get TPN 6 days a week, IV fluids, IV Benadryl, and blood products as needed. So my line is my lifeline. A lot of people in the chronic illness community that are TPN dependent, they call their central lines their lifelines because that's literally what it is. And if somebody makes an error with it, your life can be severely threatened. So I am thankful that I have had a lot of support in keeping my lines in for as long as possible and making sure that they are functioning at their absolute best. So my line has taken some normal things away from me, like showers and swimming, and every Monday afternoon when my nurse comes. But it's also given me the ability to live and be a pretty average 19 or almost 19-year-old. So these are some of my friends. All of these girls also have chronic health challenges. So on the left is my friend Megan. That was actually on Christmas. I was admitted, unfortunately, but I made the best of it. As you can see, there's some ornaments there. We were decorating a Christmas tree. And then on the top, that's Emily, the founder of Mighty Well. On the bottom is one of my absolute best friends, Rachel. She lives in Utah, and we've only met in person 3 times, but as you can see, we took one of our trips and did a photo shoot together with our tubes, and there's an amazing lady who takes pictures of kids fighting medical battles for free. And because often she knows a lot of those kids might not make it, and so she wants their family to have really good pictures of them to cherish and love and have forever. So she was so kind to take our pictures for us, and it was really fun. And then on the far end is my prom picture from last year with another one of my friends, Kenzie. She is also on TPN as well. or actually she's not anymore, but she was at the time of that picture, and she was my prom date because I'm not interested in boys right now. So these are some of my past advocacy opportunities. I am a part of the Children's Advisory Board for Phoenix Children's Hospital. And basically how I describe that to people is we are patients advocating for patients, particularly the older kids and the teenagers, because they can be a little bit forgotten when it comes to the just medical system in a children's hospital, because a lot of people are focused on making sure the little kids aren't scared and all of that, and sometimes they don't realize that we're scared too. We just don't vocalize that and show that in the same way that some little kids would. And then last year I was also a part of a panel at the National Home Infusion Association conference, and I really enjoyed that. As you can see, I was infusing at the time of that, and everybody there loved to see that I was using their products. My family is also super important to me. I am a twin, so that's my twin brother Hayden on the end. I think that picture was taken on our birthday, and then in the middle there is my mom and my grandma and me, and my dad's in the back right now. I just didn't have any good pictures of us. So I just wanted to say thank you for letting me share my story. I know that I'm not necessarily a professional, but living it is a whole different perspective that I don't think a lot of people often get to hear the details of somebody's life with all of these things. So thank you so much. I think I went a little bit quickly, but I apologize.